Hey guys, what's going on? Brandon and Vanessa here. We are actually on chapter three, so we're
Chapter 3.
we're excited to go over. We are the emotionally healthy leader. Chapter three: lead out of your marriage or singleness. Are you shushing me, or
Yeah,
did I actually have something on my lips?
you did have something on your
I
lip.
thought you were gonna be like shh, like the.
I didn't want you later to be like,
Mm-hmm.
you
I
know.
start doing weird things with my teeth when I'm on camera and I can see it. I'm like. Anyways, leading out of your marriage or singleness, chapter three.
Chapter 3.
So, man, we've gone over some fun things over the past weeks. Um, you know, shadow, inner life,
Oh, the
all the
shadow.
painful stuff,
Mm.
hidden things. But I found some hidden things this week too.
Yeah.
Every week, finding hidden things. Who doesn't love finding hidden gems?
Well, I think too we're more aware now, right? We're in this journey of like emotionally healthiness,
And I thought I
healthiness,
was emotionally healthy.
and then you hit a trigger or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's
Hmm.
not healthy. So I think there's that too, that we're intentionally looking at our emotional health, which is
Hmm.
going to bring stuff up. So
Hate it. So this chapter
yeah.
talks about marrieds and singles and coming from a place of
Leading out of your
yeah,
marriage or singleness.
yeah, leading. So
That's good coffee.
there wasn't anything in the beginning of the chapter really that stood out to me. It was just talking about what a dedicated celibate and vowed celibate and all that good stuff. I mean, I didn't really get anything until we came to the actual
Little quiz in there.
quiz.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I just highlighted just a few things. Um, it was when he was talking about like his wife being frustrated with how busy he was, and he says something like, "She's the strongest Christian I know. She can do this. She'll figure it out."
Hmm.
Um, and she made a comment, said, "Pete, my life would be easier if we were separated. At least then you would have to take the kids on the weekends."
I knew you were gonna circle that one. I was like, I hope she doesn't talk about that one.
We've had this conversation though, like even about, like other couples we've watched go through divorce or whatever. And I'm
Mhm.
like, dang, we've had this conversation. We're like, man, they get a whole weekend off, to like,
Oh, we
or
have
or
friends.
week, or whatever the arrangement is. But you're like, dang, you don't have any responsibilities besides yourself on those days.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting that now she brought this up and was like, my life would be easier because at least then she'd have a break. And we've had a lot of conversations like that in our marriage, as we both have this tendency to be like workaholics. But there's been times as a business owner you have worked 60 plus hours in a week, and like the reality of that, of like, hey, I don't get a break as a stay-at-home mom until you give me a break. So we've had lots of those kinds of conversations because it's real, where if you're watch as whoever is the primary caregiver, watching their your kids all the time and the other's always working, when do you find that break? So for her to say that, and then he said, when he thought about it, he's like, but I'm doing God's will, I reassured myself, and I'm sure doing better than my father.
Hmm.
So it was then like, okay, man, we're so quick to go like, I'm better than my parents were. And
True.
it's it their ceiling, we hear this a lot in leadership, like their ceiling should be our floor, and our ceiling should be our kids' floor.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, but we're not just trying to hit their ceiling. And that's where I felt like this comment of like, well, hey, I'm doing better than my parents did. Like that's like, cool, you just hit their ceiling. Like you have so much more to go. Like it shouldn't just be barely better, right? And you would hope that each parent, like I hope that my kids are better parents than I am, right? So like I hope that there's a continual improvement with every generation after us, of their lives, of goodness, of whatever it is. And so I don't know, I just kind of I saw that, and I know I do that often of trying to make myself feel better by comparisons, right? Like, well, I'm doing better than most, like that kind of thing.
Who
Um,
hasn't done that? Like, who hasn't compared in one area of their life, whether it's work or family or relationships?
mhm,
And, what do we have to base it off of? Like, your parents are still together.
yeah.
Mine divorced when I was 15. I have divorce is a common theme in my family.
Mm,
And so just the filter at which we look at that, it's easy to compare. But I think everyone in one way, shape, or form wants to be better than their parents. Like, they have the desire to do better or be better than their parents. And that could be healthy and unhealthy. Like,
mhm,
from I'll never be like them, from like a rebellious standpoint. But I don't know. I found myself on both sides,
mm,
with my family, because there were things that they did well and things that did not do so well.
mhm.
But yeah, I knew you were gonna circle that one.
You don't know me or anything.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of when I was really building the real estate business and I was working crazy hours. We had a lot of times where I would come home and you would act like I wasn't even there. You
Yes,
wouldn't even acknowledge me.
that's true.
And that was some of the harder times in our marriage because I'm like, I'm working so hard for our family, and you're just like, no, I'm better off without you, because I don't have to think about you. I don't have to do any, like, I'm already serving the kids. And so I remember those conversations, and we eventually, got past that.
Hmm.
But whenever someone's in a heavy work season, like we have been, things get off balance. And I think that's, as we just like kind of browse, look forward to the next few chapters, like the next chapter, we're really going to be talking about slowing down
Mm,
and making sure that you are intentional on how you spend your time, what you're doing, and priorities.
hmm.
So the marriage is that first step.
Yeah. Well, I think even, and I don't know where it is in this chapter, but there was a story there that was talking about a husband and wife, and he was gone like 4 to 5 nights a week. He was working nonstop. He'd be answering calls all the time. This is a pastor of a church, and she was used to being alone, watching the kids, getting them in bed, and falling asleep watching TV every night. And there was one small line that was like, because she was so used to that life, when he started coming back home, and they said it very short, it was a bit of a transition. It was like something super short like that. Like, and in my head, because we've experienced that, I'm like, that was a loaded, tiny statement, because we can realize, even just from our experience, how quickly you can become disconnected, because they were literally living separate lives but living in the same home, right? And so how quickly it was that I could go, hey, I'm in my routine, my rhythm, because I'm surviving, because it's me or nothing, because you're not here. And so
Mhm.
I'm getting in my routine, my rhythm, and you'd come home and it was like, you are messing up my flow.
Mhm.
I have at this time we do this, and then I'm going to do dinner. I'm going to clean the thing. I'm going
Mhm.
to put the kids to bed. Like it was like there's just this routine, and then you come home and it was like, what are you doing? You're, this isn't part of the plan. So it was really hard
I
to
remember.
incorporate you in when you were wanting to come home. But as you kind of mentioned, when what we learned from that was, number one, like, I think compassion and understanding of how quickly people really can fall away from each other, how quickly it was for us to do that, and why for at least the last 4 or 5 years that we have implemented a weekly date night. We had taken a couple years off, I think like 2 years off, because we used to do date nights we'd find another couple and we
Hmm.
would do date nights every other week. But the weeks that we weren't having a date, so we would watch their kids and they would go have a date night. And then when the following week, then they'd watch our kids and we'd go have a date night. And that was working, and it worked really well. And then we lost our friends that we're doing that with, and so we took a
We
couple
didn't lose
years.
them. They didn't fall off a cliff and die on impact.
No, they
They
moved.
moved.
Yeah. So so But we couldn't, it took us time to figure out, okay, now we're going to pay for a sitter. Okay, we can't do it every week, maybe every, so it was, but then my parents came to move next to us,
Came to the rescue.
and we get a date night now, thankfully, every single week. And I know that it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference when we don't have it for whatever reason. But we really treat those as sacred because we do need that face to face time. But even saying all of that, where we feel like, okay, we get connection, we every single week we get to go out on a date together, we get to have face to face time. Often we're having very intimate, deep conversations that lead to tears on my part. So,
I cried once,
did you?
almost.
Oh,
Yeah,
like
the
a baby, like a
beginnings.
baby tear.
Yeah, the beginnings of a tear.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, she touched me.
Yeah. So, she touched me. So even with all of that, thinking like, oh man, we were really good at this and we do have really good communication, but reading through this chapter and through the quiz and everything like that was just like, okay, but we could do better.
Yeah, we can do better.
Yeah. I'll read this one little part and then I want you to go into the quiz part, right?
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wrote married couples bear witness to the depth of Christ's love. Their vows focus on and limit them to loving one person exclusively, permanently, and intimately. Singles bear witness to the breadth, breadth, like breadth, breath. Anyway, of Christ's love. Because they're not limited by a vow to one person, they have more freedom and time to express the love of Christ to a broad range of people. Both marrieds and singles point to and reveal Christ's love, but in different ways. So I thought that was really cool because it's kind of laying that foundation for why there's married, why there's such thing as marriage, why there's such thing as singleness, as far as like where Paul says like, hey, I wish you'd all be single, because they're free to love many people versus marrieds, we choose one person, and that's the example of how Christ loves the church, right? So I just wanted to read that.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's talk about the
Tony the Tiger.
great. Let's talk about the quiz. How healthy is your ability to lead out of your marriage or singleness? Before I go there, if you're with us or just joining us, I know that this book gears towards, it's really kind of targeted towards like Christian leaders or church leaders. But I'll tell you, like, I'm just a regular, real estate consultant, realtor. But I'm a dad also. So I'm a leader of 4 boys. And so as we get deeper in these chapters, I'm realizing there's just so much more here where I really have to, uh, it's not just for church leaders. Like, there's so much to get here. And it's about leading well, leading your family, leading your wife, leading your children. So it's not just like a one size fits all. I think that there's a lot of good things that you can implement through all of this. So, how healthy is your ability to lead out of your marriage or singleness? Uh, I crushed this quiz.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's the best one I've done. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
I scored threes and fours
Tell
on
me if I'm
almost
wrong.
everything.
Well, it's
Uh,
your opinion.
my opinion. What's your opinion?
Huh?
No one cares.
No, it's your.
No, I'm
I
kidding.
said it's your opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I felt like I was strong. I was more strong in this area of our marriage than others. Now, part of that could be because I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, and some people call it the need to be needed. Some people call it the pleaser. I'm always sensitive to my wife's needs, and always thinking about leading the family, integrity in marriage, wanting to have a healthy marriage, wanting to have connection. And I would say that's the one thing that we kind of go back and forth on. We can be like really, really connected, and then sometimes not, especially if we miss date night or don't have a lot of conversations. Like, we put the kids down late and we don't get to like talk
Mm-hmm.
for multiple days in a row, 2, 3 days in a row. Then there's kind of a disconnect, I
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Yeah, it has to be like the daily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was definitely threes and fours. Um, More threes and fours, and then two of them were twos.
Mm-hmm. So where were your twos?
My twos were a key factor for me in discerning God's will in major ministry initiatives is the impact it will have on my marriage. And I put two, rarely true of me, because I feel like I am not. That is not a key. Like I think about like, Lord, do you want me to do this? I
Mm-hmm.
don't even think of how is that going to affect my marriage. Like it's just
Mm-mm.
I'm not wired that way yet. So
Well, I mean, you couldn't even think about these types of things even of a year ago, because I've been dealing with health issues for years,
yeah,
7
that's true.
years.
I mean, there were no questions. It was like, nope. The answer's no.
You're like, I can't. I got to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
I was using all the energy I had just to get through the day.
So yeah,
I scored a
it's
2 on that as well.
oh, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So two would be I am comfortable articulating a biblical vision for marrieds and singles on how each serves to bear witness to God's love. A biblical vision. So I think that to me was the thing that I'm like, I don't really even know necessarily what that would be, because it's not like I've studied what marriage is in the Bible, like I don't feel like I have that ability to comfortably articulate a biblical vision for it. So I was
Yeah,
like, rare,
I see how
rare.
you can get caught up on the biblical vision, but I don't see it as like the first word I think of is seminary. Like, I don't see it as like theological. I see it as like sharing what marriage represents.
Mm.
Like that's kind of how I see it. It's like how can being married bear witness to God's love? How can being married show God's love? And it's through connection, it's through relationship, it's through putting each other first. It's through loving each other and putting each other before your children, and work and all that stuff. So that's kind of how I perceived it.
Hmm. Well, I mean, yeah. So I take it as biblical vision. So it's like actually studying the word and being like, okay, I know this from speaking, why I'm saying this because of this,
Mm-hmm.
like because of these scriptures, because of this. Like, yeah, it's more of a
Yeah.
theological background. So that just might be my teacher side.
I wouldn't say you're wrong. I mean, everybody interprets it a different way, but I'm like the anti-studier. Like I would rather spend time. Excuse me. I would rather spend time with the Lord than I'll read the Word every once in a while when I'm prompted, but I'm not as much of a studier as I am just asking the Lord and having conversations.
Hmm.
So. Cool. Well, how did you guys score? We'd love to hear what stood out for you. But mostly threes and fours is good for us. That means we're semi-healthy. Like,
Yeah, so I wanted to read that because there are some things in that that stuck out to me because towards the last page of the chapter 3, they kind of give a breakdown like if you scored mostly ones and twos, if you then this, if you scored threes and fours, then this, if you scored
mm-hmm.
mostly fours and fives, then this. Ones and twos and threes, fours and fives. So we did twos and threes and fours.
I would say closer to the threes and fours.
Okay. So this one, I highlighted the twos and threes. And what I highlighted was you may be leading out of marriage to some degree, but still lacking a rich theological vision.
See,
And
theological vision is different than
that's it.
biblical vision,
Well, it
man.
says or practical applications of the truth in this chapter. So like, yes, we do a lot of practical stuff, but again, that's why I highlighted that because it's like theological vision for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just said to spend time pondering next steps with God, asking Him for clarity on on 2 to 3 areas He would have you focus on. And then you said mostly, well, you said threes and fours.
I was like almost equal on threes and fours.
So if you scored mostly fours and fives, you are blessed. You are leading out of your marriage. I hope that this chapter has deepened and broadened your perspective around God's vision for you as a leader. What might be an invitation you're hearing from God today? Ask Him what your next steps might be in helping others to discern and integrate their marriage with their leadership. So,
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we're there, but one of the reasons why we even did this book, I mean, there was some obvious issues that I've been having emotionally that I need to actually feel my emotions. And that comes from,
weird, huh?
there's a lot there. But also, when we talked about starting a YouTube channel in general, it was like, man, we have a great marriage, we have great kids, we have leadership capabilities, we have uh, we've had some success in business. Like we have all these things. We're part of a ministry. So when I think about all of that, it's there's there's so much there, and part of that, part of the structure of it all is that we do have a really solid marriage. That's one of our stronger
Yeah,
areas.
yeah, for sure.
We can always improve though. So, if you want to lead out of your marriage, then you must make marriage, not leadership, your first ambition, your first passion, and your loudest gospel message.
Yeah, that to me is like still wrapping my mind around that, because I think I told you I highlighted something that said like out of the overflow of the love in your marriage is where you minister from. Like the
Hmm.
overflow coming from your marriage is the love that you pour out on other people. So I was like, wow, I've never really, it's always been like, oh, my relationship with the Lord. And in my overflow, that is where I minister, just like cutting you out completely. So almost having like that single mindset where it's like, I could love everyone because it's me and Jesus, right? But this book is like challenging me to go, okay, but it's not just you and Jesus. Like you made a commitment and a vow to another person on this earth to love them and prioritize them. And so, how do you minister out of that? So that was a big thing for me where I was like,
Hmm.
Matt, where are you at?
I am on page 92.
Oh, you
The
92.
first item on your leadership job description is to conduct your life in such a way that your demeanor and choices consistently demonstrate to your spouse that he or she is loved and lovable. Touch me all the time.
Lovable. I was going to read this. This was actually right before that, because this was like some of um, the default thinking around marriages in Christian like culture. And so I read some of these, and it was like, um, do you recognize any of these? And I felt like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've heard these, you know, throughout my time as a Christian, which since I was 16, maybe. So a leader's highest, these are all things that aren't right, but that are common in Christian culture. A leader's highest priority is to build an effective and successful ministry to reveal Jesus' love to the world. We give our best time and energy to achieve that objective. Marriage is important, but secondary on the priority list. A leader's connection or oneness with Jesus is separate from his or her connection to a spouse or close friends and family. So, like, that was something kind of I was saying, like, no, 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 it's all about me and Jesus. You need to wait. Um, and really, the book is saying it's one. So, um,
Your mic is completely
oh, okay, cool. My mic was down my shirt. It's fine. Now it's just going to make noise. So,
covered.
how a decision might impact a leader's marriage is a secondary rather than primary consideration in ministry discernment and decision making, which we just talked about. Leaders need to get as much training and equipping as possible to improve their leadership skills. They should get training and equipping for marriage if they have problems or crisis. Which, yeah, we've heard that a lot, but we've also heard the reverse where it was like, okay, you don't go fix your car when it's broken. Like you get oil changes on the regular to prevent it from being broken. So we have also heard that too, where we should be prioritizing our marriage in that way. Christian leaders need sound doctrine and a foundational theology, but they can't be experts on everything. There are more essential things to know and understand than a theology of marriage, singleness, or sexuality. And so they're basically saying, well, no, you really should have a good theological background of marriage, singleness, and sexuality. Christian leaders don't need to be overly concerned about marriage for their teams. Senior leaders, in particular, should know how to care for these aspects of their lives by the time they get into higher levels of leadership. Like this assumption, like if you're in high levels of leadership, you should have everything down and perfect and good. So I just thought those were interesting as moving forward because those are some of the foundational things that are common in our culture, in Christian culture. And then now we're kind of like unpacking those and saying, no, now it's like a rewiring of our brains. So that's why some of this was harder for me because I'm like, oh man, I really don't think like that. So
Hmm. That's a good thing.
I also
Mhm.
highlighted what you highlighted.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And
so,
lovable, yeah.
so when we talk about demonstrating to your spouse that he or she is loved, the author says, "What is important to Jerry today, which is his wife? How can I be present to her in a way that reflects Jesus' love?" So I read this, and then I went upstairs because it was the morning, and you were having like an extremely hard morning. And I just went up there and I just actually asked myself this question, like, how can I be present to you in a way that reflects Jesus' love? And you remember that?
Yeah, was it Monday?
Yeah, something like that.
It's third. Yeah, it's Monday.
Yeah. And I just decided that I was going to be there for you. So I asked questions and I listened, and then I asked you what you needed. Did you get what you needed?
I did.
I think you did. Yeah. I just thought about that as I was reading that. Is I actually took that into action because there was a sacrifice that I had to make in my day. But it was like, no, I think you need, um, you know, there's something that you needed that you couldn't do if you had the kids that day.
Mm.
I think I took them for a
Yeah, you
while.
did. I remember kind of thinking like, is he serious or?
And it's
It
only
just kind of
it's
threw me off. But I was like, if he's offering, I'm taking it
well,
because it was a
we were
high
at that.
anxiety um, day that I just needed to get out of the house, and you took Micah and picked up the boys too, right?
Mhm.
So I had a staff meeting that day and a lot of different things and was dealing with anxiety. So I had to get outside and walk.
And so I think I'm just mentioning that because it doesn't have to be complicated. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I be there for them? How can I love them? How can I demonstrate God's love? It's different for everyone. But I mean, if you're married, like, ask yourself that. Like, imagine the point of view you would have if you're asking yourself that every day. And it opens up opportunities, is what it does. Because when
Mm-hmm.
your mind's focused on that, then you can be more open to.
Well, even just putting that in that way, like if someone's asking themselves, how can I be present for someone else? That's a very selfless thing to do. It is what Jesus did. Like he laid down his life for us. And so in doing that, how can I be present for my spouse? Like you're laying down the part or all, like depending on what it is, like of your day for that other person. And
Hmm.
so that is a really beautiful thing in being there for them, being showing that love and that they're lovable and that they are loved. So yeah, that's beautiful.
I think it's time for the sex talk.
So we're going there already?
I mean, do you have
You
other
just want to
things you want to
jump?
share?
Um, Marriage is your first passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wrote, I just wrote, um,
Bosh.
yep, passion. is a strong and barely controllable emotion. Barely controllable, people. If marriage, not leadership, is our first passion, then married Christian leaders should be among the most in love couples in church.
You would think, huh?
The most in love couples at church.
Yeah.
That means our passion, the focus of that strong and barely controllable emotion, is not devoted to pursuing leadership goals or achievements, but to our spouse. He was like, oh, as a three whose whole life revolves around success and achievement, we are called the achievers. So, like, it was like, oh, that hurt. Okay, I shouldn't be getting excited about, opportunities here and there and there. It's like, no, your uncontrollable emotion and passion should be towards your spouse.
What would that be like?
More touch for you.
You touch me at church?
I do. So we've talked about this. So
That's the biggest joke.
His love language is touch. Mine is not. Mine is quality time, which is why that face-to-face date night is huge. Quality time, words of affirmation, and touch is probably one of my lowest ones. However, I'm like, I don't know why it is in church. Like I'm like scratch you, and I touch
The
him.
only time all week.
And I finally realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's like I can't work, I can't clean, I can't check my phone. My kids are in like Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're off in their classes. It's literally me, Jesus, and my husband. And it was like, oh, it's because I'm at total rest because I can't do anything. I can't,
Yeah.
all the things I just said. I can't check my phone. I can't work. I shouldn't be on social media. I shouldn't, like, all the things that I'm not going to be doing in that moment. And so that automatically puts me closer to him, where I'm like doing all this business because
And everyone thinks we're in love.
I'm totally present though. And so I
Yeah.
think that is actually something very key to, as a revelation, even of just for anybody who, when we are at peace, right? When we're at rest, we are probably one of the most loving versions of ourselves, versus when we are stressed, or there's a lot of anxiety, or there's a lot of busyness. We're not going to be the best spouse there is. So I think that even just in the simplicity of that, it's me, Jesus, and you in that moment while I'm listening and being fed by whoever's speaking. Like I'm just totally present. So I don't know that. There you go. Take it for what it's worth.
I like it when you're present.
Yeah.
Sadly, most couples become less passionate and less sexual after they marry, especially when one spouse is consumed with leadership tasks. Very few of us have been equipped to have a passionate, flourishing marriage. We expect that it will happen naturally. It does not. It must be cultivated. The question then is how? How do we cultivate a passionate marriage, especially in the context of leadership? There are three things: praying for passion, making passion an intentional spiritual practice, and affirming one another.
Mm-hmm.
How often do we do those three things?
I don't think I ever have prayed for passion. Like, Lord, give me passion for my husband.
Give me passion.
I've never prayed that. So like I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I highlighted, underlined, we ask God for grace to live in love each day. And I thought that was so good because he was like, I tried being passionate for my wife, but that faded because I can't sustain that on my own. And he was like, so I realized I had to start praying for passion, and the Holy Spirit kept us thinking about each other throughout the day. So prayer kept their hearts focused on God, his love for the world, and on their marriage. And so I just thought that was so good because
Mm-hmm.
it's just something, number one, I've never done. Number two, never would have even thought of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like one of those nuggets of wisdom, like from someone who's been there, done that, and has a marriage longer, more successful than ours. successful as in like more time and duration and whatever. That was a good nugget. Like pray for passion.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really good.
You want to talk about the?
No, go ahead. I'm sure you're going to love it. This is his favorite.
We make cultivating passion an intentional spiritual practice.
It's a spiritual
So
practice.
cover your ears if you're under 18. We are committed. This is the author. We are committed to regular physical nakedness, naked in Tahiti, and union as a
Naked.
spiritual practice and declaration of the first importance of our marital vocation. Basically, they just set aside 20 minutes to get naked together without shame in each other's arms. And of course, where does my mind go? It's like, well, if we're going to be naked, what's going to happen
And
next?
of course, I underlined the goal is not sexual intercourse.
Uh,
Oh,
we simply want to be passionately connected to one another physically, spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. If you
that
are a
was good.
man and you are watching this, please tell me what you think of this. I would love to hear from you. You know, men don't usually think about physically, spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually, like all of those. That's deep. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this was as hard for you as it was for me. Uh, However, we did do it one time, like lay with each other, and it was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we intentionally make love outside the bedroom, tender touches, thoughtful gestures, surprise gifts, appealing dress, as well as inside the bedroom. So the skin to skin practice spills
Skin to
over,
skin.
skin to skin, spills over into a whole life, permeating all of our days and activities.
Well, I think we joke about it, skin to skin, because that was such a big deal when you first have babies.
Mm-hmm.
We've had our babies, and every single time you get the whole spiel about like, make sure you're having plenty of skin to skin time with your baby. It releases a lot of endorphins and a lot of the bonding hormones and all of that. And it's like, well, why would that be any different for us?
We
Like
need
it
it.
really does make a difference when you're having skin to skin contact. There's something that happens as two humans are touching like that, especially intimately, where a baby's sleeping on your chest, or you're snuggling in bed or whatever. It's like it makes so much sense. And there's
Yeah,
like skin to skin, skin to
yeah, and like I wonder if we did like a challenge,
skin.
like 21 days, skin to skin.
Yeah,
Oh,
this says daily,
yeah. How often did you think it was?
once a week.
That's what she wanted. She wanted once a week, and I was
He's all,
like,
no, it's daily.
it
You know,
said daily. She's like,
seven
no
days a
way.
week.
And then she saw that, and she was like, nope.
I underlined something too, that he
Hmm.
was saying this spiritual practice also serves to cultivate an atmosphere of sexual attraction between us. And I think that there's something really special about that, because when you think of a married couple, most married couples at certain points are walking around in their underwear, brushing their teeth. It's like they're going to the bathroom and the door is halfway open or fully open, it doesn't matter. And it kind of like you lose that sense of allure, right? Because it's like, yeah, I see him jacked up all the time. Like, I see him like hair messed up, no makeup, in a robe. So like,
Yeah, I don't.
to
I don't wear makeup on Saturdays.
oh yeah, I know. Well, I forgot your powder today. So just, just, just that idea of, oh, you're snuggling but you don't get any. That has to be creating some kind of sexual tension slash attraction, because
Gosh.
yes, because because in a marriage normally there's not that. It's like if you want it you get it, it's end of story. Or
Yeah.
it's just like, oh yeah, they are naked again.
Naked every
So
day, he said.
I thought it was a good one.
So then he talks about affirming each other. So intentionally affirming each other. It's been said that you find what you look for. Look for faults, and you will find faults. Look for beauty, and you will find beauty. Regular, sincere affirmation is one of the greatest gifts one spouse can give to another. When we look for goodness and beauty in one another and speak honest words of life over one another, we become God with skin on for the other. Affirmations heal wounds, cover shame, and communicate how God sees us as infinitely valuable and lovable.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I highlighted just underneath that intentionally affirming your spouse, especially when you know his or her faults better than anyone on earth, is one of the greatest gifts you can give. Because it's true. It's like we know each other the most, right? Out of anybody, like especially with the conversations that we've had, the journeys we've had, like all of that stuff. And then to receive those words of affirmation when they know your worst, right? Like it is a very powerful thing, and it is a great gift.
Yeah. When we can't get enough of each other, we see the world in full color, not black and white. That's passion.
That's just the word for the day.
I just think that we need to do like a meme where I'm just over and over just saying passion, passion.
Oh gosh.
Like over. I think people would
Mm.
download it. All right. So towards the end here, before he gets into leading out of singleness, which we're not really going to go into today, but there is a whole section of leading singleness. There is part of a quiz. He basically says like restructuring your priorities.
Yeah.
Like when you do a weekly to-do list, restructuring the priorities, and he talks about these three. Do you want to go over those?
No, go ahead. I literally just wrote weekly to-do list right there.
Yeah, but you got to do a daily one.
What?
You gotta,
Weekly.
no, you do a weekly, but then you do one daily one, skin to skin.
Oh gosh. Read the
Spend time alone with God, listing times and spiritual practices for the week. Invest in your spouse and their marriage, listing times and specific actions for the week. Everything else at your church or job. So he said at the church, message prep, staff meetings, board meetings, etc.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do not prioritize spending time alone with God. Like I have a rhythm. I do that in the morning. Sometimes I read, sometimes I don't. Mostly worship, but I don't have that as the first thing. And then investing time in our marriage for me is our our date night. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like I already know that set. I already know we're doing that, so I don't have to think about it. But it shouldn't be all. It shouldn't just be like, all right, that's taken care of next.
Weekly.
Yeah,
Right, that's the weekly.
it's weekly.
What's the daily?
Daily is skin to skin.
No. No.
Oh, it's
It's
not?
how you're supposed to be present for me.
Yeah, present. Invest.
How are you going to show me that I'm loved and lovable?
Skin to skin.
No. Oh, you made me smart.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all we got for this week. I hope that you guys are tracking with us. We'll be back. Chapter 4 is going to be, you might see a tear come out of my eye on that one because I just looked ahead briefly and I'm like, oh, that's a tough one. But
Yeah.
we're excited you're on this journey with us. We'd love to hear from you. Just put in the comments below kind of what this chapter was for you and what stood out the most. And we will see you guys next week for chapter 4, which is
No idea.
what?
What's it
You
called?
gotta tell them.
Loving union?
Yeah, loving
Some
union.
about loving union.
Loving union, which sounds easy, but it's
Slow down for loving union
it.
with Jesus, not each other.
Yeah,
So
but
chapter 3 was marriage. Chapter 4 is how are you spending time alone in solitude and silence with Jesus.
painful. Either way, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.